So let's start with some cringe. We're going to dive right into the deep end with this pure grade A cringe here. This is the military grade stuff. Okay, this is something. Up in Canada, which of course is the cringiest country on earth, next to Australia, they're working on a bill to lower the voting age to 16. And that's not the cringy part. Well, it is cringy, but it gets worse. Senator Bernadette Clement is a supporter of that bill, and she wanted to express her support for it. And she decided to express her support this way. Watch.
Now bear with me as I go into my last paragraph here, because I had this part translated into Gen Z for us. Honorable fam, waiting to vote until 18 is a big yikes and mad shuggy. But S201 hits different. Today's youth slays and stays bussin'. That's why we got to give them a chance to clap back. If not, how will we be able to say that they ate that up? No cap, this bill slaps and is electoral glow up. I am its #1 stan for real. Merci, thank you, Nyawa.
My God, God help us. God help us all. Up until now, the most out of touch and embarrassing attempt to appeal to the youth I'd ever seen in my life was probably when I went to a Christian youth camp as a kid, which is where a lot of cringy, embarrassing attempts to appeal to the youth occur. But anyway, went to one when I was a kid, and there was a priest who broke into a freestyle rap on stage. Freestyle rap about how we should, I don't know, I can't remember what the subject was, about how Jesus is awesome or something along those lines. So up until this moment, that was the pinnacle of this particular brand of cringe that I'd ever witnessed. But I think this beats it. I think that this comes out on top. And more importantly, of course, letting 16-year-olds vote is an insane idea. I mean, it's Canada. So what difference does it make at this point, you could say? If Canada wants to speed up its own march into its own self-annihilation, then that's Canada's choice. I have no dog in the fight, really. But it's worth addressing because lowering the voting age is an idea that has a fair amount of support in this country also. In fact, unless there's some kind of sudden miraculous restoration of basic common sense in this country, I suspect that the voting age in the U.S. will be lowered at some point in the next probably 10 years. And what makes this inevitable is that politicians, especially Democrat politicians, have a vested interest in lowering the voting age. Like that's why anything that actually happens, anything they really get done, it only gets done because it serves their purposes, obviously, and this would. And it helps them because 16-year-olds are naive and ignorant, and that's what politicians love. Politicians love naive and ignorant voters because they're easier to manipulate. Now, of course, we already have millions of naive and ignorant adult voters who collectively are ushering us into our national ruination. So that's already happening, but there can never be enough. From the perspective of our political leaders, like you can never get enough of those kinds of voters. And that's the only reason why anybody in a position of power would want to lower the voting age. It is specifically so that they can increase the number of ignorant, intellectually malleable voters. And really lowering the voting age, although it's an insane thing to do, it's just a logical extension of our current approach to voting anyway. Because most people already believe that voting is a universal human right, which it isn't. Something that everybody should participate in, which they shouldn't. And that it doesn't matter if somebody's clueless, it doesn't matter if they have no skin in the game, it doesn't matter if they're not contributing members of society, they should all still vote. Like that is the popular perception. And it's completely wrong. This idea that the most important thing is just for lots of people to be voting. That's the prevailing attitude. Now, granted, nobody actually believes that. That's not a view that anyone actually holds. Because when it comes down to it, even the people that say, well, it's a universal right whenever to vote, Well, no, they want more of their own people to vote. Of course. So nobody really believes that, but that's what people pretend to believe. And based on that attitude, sure, why not have 16-year-olds vote? Why not have 12-year-olds vote? Why not have babies register to vote at the same time that their birth certificates are issued? I mean, why not? I can think of a million reasons why not, but we already reject all of those reasons. Because in reality, as I've been shouting to no avail, for years now, I've been shouting from the rooftops, quite uselessly, really, but still, it bears repeating anyway. That the problem with voting is that too many people do it. That's our actual problem. It's not a lack of participation. It's not a lack of when voter turnout is lower, that's not a problem that we should be worried about. Okay, if voter turnout in a particular election is 10%, is down 10% from the election cycle before, we shouldn't say, oh no, it's down 2%, 10%. We should say, okay, it's down 10%. It's still like 80% higher than it should be. Like there's still we need to cut off another 80%. Probably of the people who vote, maybe like 10% of them should be. Maybe 10% are qualified to be voting. If we actually cared about the future of our country, then this is the kind of conversation we'd be having, but we can't. And the problem is that, again, our elected representatives, I mean, they have no interest in this. They're not going to ever talk about actually excluding people from voting because it's a politically suicidal thing to say, but also because, again, it cuts against their own interests. Why would they want to do anything that ensures a more invested, more knowledgeable voting base? They don't want that. That's the worst thing for these people. And the dumber our elected representatives get, the more that's the case. Like the dumber they get, the dumber they need the voters to be. When we played that Jerry Springer Waffle House showdown that happened at a congressional hearing a couple weeks ago with Jasmine Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC, and the whole thing just completely embarrassing and humiliating for everybody involved, but also for the country. But that's the kind of thing that if you had only knowledgeable, fully invested, contributing members of society voting, that would never happen because none of those people would be in office. It wouldn't be possible for them to get elected. But they are because this is the direction we're going instead. So I guess this is a way of saying, like, okay, yeah, it's crazy to allow 16-year-olds to vote, but at this point, but whatever. It doesn't even matter. It honestly just doesn't even matter. I suspect we'll eventually get to a point where even if our elected representatives don't want to have the conversation, at least there will be a critical mass of normal Americans who are ready to talk about this, ready to actually fundamentally question what so many accept as like a religious dogma, that there's this universal right to vote and everyone should be able to do it. It's just completely false. It was never how our country was set up. You cannot have a functioning country that works that way. You just can't. No, not everyone should have a say in the direction of the country. No. Why should everyone? Just because you exist? Just because you exist, you should have a say? Why? If you're a moron and you have no clue what's happening in your own country, if I were to ask you the branches of government and you couldn't even tell me, if you're not a contributing member of society, if you're not doing anything, why the hell should you have any say at all? Well, just because I'm me. Well, I don't care if you're you. I'm a human being. Okay, well, you're a human being. Great. You have a fundamental moral worth as a human being. That doesn't mean that your perspective on who should lead the country has any value at all. Eventually, we get to a point where we're all ready to have this, or not, maybe not all of us, but enough of us are ready to have this conversation that there can even be a conversation. But right now, we're just not there. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.